Hey everyone, welcome to the video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Solomon Thomas. I'm a former Marine Corps officer. I just received my master's in general psychology, and I have the goal of becoming a clinical psychologist one day. So I'm making these YouTube videos to practice articulating myself and expounding upon these different ideas that I'm coming across with the hopes that they might be useful to anyone out there who's listening. Today I want to talk about perception, complexity, and knowledge, and I want to start off with a quote by C.S. Lewis. I believe the context for this quote is that Lewis is criticizing the broader culture at that time for underestimating the complexity of religion more broadly and Christianity more specifically. It is no good asking for a simple religion. After all, real things are not simple. They look simple, but they are not. The table I am sitting at looks simple, but ask a scientist to tell you what it is really made of, all about the atoms and how the light waves rebound from them and hit my eye and what they do to the optic nerve and what it does to my brain. And of course, you find that what we call seeing a table lands you in mysteries and complications which you can hardly get to the end of. A child saying a child's prayer looks simple, and if you are content to stop there, well and good. But if you are not, and the modern world usually is not, if you want to go on and ask what is really happening, then you must be prepared for something difficult. If we ask for something more than simplicity, it is silly then to complain that something more is not simple. Reality is not neat, not obvious, not what you expect. So in this example, in this quote, C.S. Lewis uses a table. I want to try to do the same thing with a cup. When it comes to our visual perception and our experience of seeing the cup, it feels very simple. It feels like this is a unified object that is simply here for us to utilize. It's a tool to help us drink from, or it's a social tool at a party that we can put something to drink in so that way we don't look so weird and we have something to do with our hands. We could also use it to play an instrument. If we wanted to, we could, bang on it, or we could throw it at someone if we needed to use it as a weapon. There are so many affordances that this cup manifests to us, but it doesn't appear that way. There are also many facts about the cup. So, for example, it has a certain length, a certain width, a certain density. The light reflects off it in a certain way. It has a certain viscosity. It's at a certain temperature right now. And we could also understand that this cup isn't just one thing. There are also many components to it, because if we were to break it, then we would see that there's many components to it. And at the microscopic level, there's many molecules and atoms and subparticles, and all of those have their own position within the cup that come together to make this unified object. And as we ascend the levels of abstraction, we can say that this cup is currently on a table. So that's another fact. That's a relational fact about the cup. The cup is on a table, which is on the ground, and the cup is on the table, which is on the ground, or at least the floor of my apartment, which is a part of a broader building, which is in New York, and we can go on. Now, many people might say, well, yes, those are facts, but in a trivial sense, because I don't care about those facts. And I would say that that is the key component to understanding visual perception. You see, to a large degree, what you care about. And that means that the world isn't necessarily self-evident to you. Your visual perceptual experience is constructed in large part depending upon what your goal is. And so if I want to drink from this cup, there's nothing in there right now, but if I wanted to drink from this cup, I would view it as a thing to drink from. And I could actually replace the different facts about this cup. I can get a whole different cup, like this one right here. And in some sense, these two objects are the same thing. They're both things to drink from. And it doesn't really matter that they're shaped differently, that they have different colors, that the light reflects off them differently, that this one's a little bit colder than this one. When it comes to my goal of drinking, those objects are the same thing. And the way that my mind processes the information is very similar. They're the same object. But at the same time, we know that they aren't the same object. The facts are very different. what I want to try to illustrate in this video is that the world is extremely complex. Although we can experience it as simple at times, particularly when everything is going well. I think my friend told me recently of a fight that he had with his girlfriend, and they almost broke up. They've been together now for 4 years. And the trigger of the fight was the position of a toilet seat. From that trigger point led to a disagreement, which evolved into an argument for a couple of hours that almost ended their relationship. Now, if the world was simple and the facts were all laid bare for us to receive them passively and then we could know the truth, how could something like the position of a toilet seat lead to a conflict like that? How can it trigger so many emotions and so many feelings? And I don't know the exact specifics of the argument, but I'm sure some things were said that each person regretted later. And I think part of the answer there is that it wasn't just a toilet seat. It wasn't just the position of this object in a room that caused an argument. It was probably related to the care that one person has for another, or it was related to, I don't know, something associated with a childhood memory that is unconscious that is influencing how one person sees that object. What I'm trying to say is that we experience, I think, and many times in our lives, the full complexity of the world when we encounter conflicts, when we make a mistake at work, or when we thought we did well on a test at school, but we actually get a bad grade, or when we get into arguments with our partners and our spouses. The fact that those conflicts emerge indicate to us that something about our knowledge structure, about our theory about how things work in the world is inadequate. It might be that our entire theory about the world is inadequate. And I think that the degree to which the conflict is severe, it points to how much of your knowledge structure is insufficient. And I think what C.S. Lewis was pointing to at his time is true today, particularly with religion, but I would say just more broadly. I think that many of us believe that the world is a simple place, that people are simple, that if you just told people what they needed to do to figure out their life, then they would do it. And I believe, again, people have their own experiences that tell them that the contrary is true. Many of us know that we need to work out, we need to go to the gym, we need to eat well, we need to save money, and we know all of our virtues and vices, and yet we still continue going down bad paths at times. We know that we need to work out, but we don't go to the gym. We know that we need to eat well, but we go get McDonald's instead. I'm currently reading Dostoevsky, and I just finished The Idiot, but prior to that, I was reading Notes from Underground. And there's a scene in that book where the underground man talks about how if you gave man everything, materially speaking, he would purposefully do something to eradicate that utopian structure just so something interesting would happen. And I think that's absolutely true. I think that we're not transparent to ourselves. I think we develop these theories and maps about the world and we use them to navigate. But there are just times, often, where those maps and theories are insufficient, and the complexity of the world that's actually there manifests itself, and we can either crumble under that complexity and we become frustrated and anxious and depressed, or we can retool our knowledge structures to better account for this new information that we receive. And I think that's what you do in intimate relationships when you are hashing out those arguments, and when you are navigating those conflicts. You're trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, and if you're both oriented correctly in terms of trying to have a positive and meaningful relationship, well, then you loosen up those knowledge structures and those theories you have about the world, and you make room for new theories and new ways of perceiving the world that you perhaps hadn't considered before. And I believe that to the degree that you can navigate those conflicts successfully, that you will refine your map and hone those navigation faculties so that way you can avoid that conflict in the future. And I think that that's something in our culture that we need to do a better job of understanding. The world isn't self-evident to us. We aren't dealing exactly directly with reality itself. We are dealing with a constructed map of the territory that can be better or worse. And in some sense, we can't get a firm grip on reality in any absolute sense. Although I do think that through our map, we have some sort of fractal relationship with reality. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. And so once you understand that, how you perceive the world is largely a product of your past experience, your anticipations of the future, the current context, and it's not just the world itself imposing itself on you. Well, if you're suffering unnecessarily, and if you're engaged in conflict, and if your social relationships are in disarray, well, then maybe you can think, how can I retool my map to make these things better? The alternative would be, if the world is made up of self-evident facts and I'm experiencing a large amount of suffering right now, well, there's likely not much that I can do because it's very difficult to change the world. And so at least this version of visual perception and this constructivist philosophy that I'm trying to elucidate, it's at least a little more optimistic, where if you're going through something, you can ask yourself the question, I know that things are more complex than I imagined, so how can I retool my map and reconfigure my knowledge structures to better align themselves with reality so that way I can avoid conflicts in the future? To try to conclude, I also think that this is one way to understand personality and individual differences. Again, I don't think that reality is a set of self-evident facts that make themselves manifest to us. I think that reality is something like infinite potential. It's something like information that's latent that manifests itself to us when we approach it with our faculties, with our consciousness, with our aims and our value hierarchy. And it's the construction, or it's the amalgamation of the constraints of reality, of this latent information, and our value hierarchy that generates an experience for us. I think that different personalities represent different value hierarchies to a degree. And I think that they evolved because there are multiple ways to navigate this world correctly. And that's not to invoke some sort of moral relativism where everyone can indeed have a different perspective, but they're all equally valid. No, I do think there are some incorrect ways of navigating the world, but I do think that different personality types embody different ways of being that are optimal in different contexts. Which is why I think it's important for us to talk to each other, and why diversity, in the sense of having a diverse set of personality configurations in the people around you, I think that can be helpful because, again, our knowledge structures and our maps need retooling always. And if we're trying to make our way in this world with the least amount of unnecessary suffering that we can, then it would be helpful for us to first acknowledge that we have a map and we're not dealing with the territory itself. Then it would also be helpful for us to have multiple people with multiple maps who can help us move forward when one person's map takes us into a pit or prevents us from moving forward. And then we can quickly have a discussion and talk to other people and see, okay, my way of thinking isn't working right now. It's not helping us attain our goal. Let's try to embody another way of thinking. Okay, I'm going to end the video there. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.